Welcome to The Blissful Life, a podcast where we awaken the wisdom of self and explore the lessons, the rituals, and the pathways to inner bliss. I'm your host, Regina Lawless, former corporate executive turned author and spiritual teacher. And I'm on a mission, y'all, to help people connect to and express their divine self so they can make their unique impact on the world. If you've been feeling like there is more to life than the hustle and grind, then you found your tribe. It's time to breathe and relax into the blissful life. Hello and welcome back to The Blissful Life. I'm your host, Regina Lawless, and in today's solo episode, I'm going to talk about the bliss of spiritual connection. Be sure to stay tuned to the end of the episode so you can listen to another installment of Bliss or That. So let's dive in. Spiritual connection. What do I mean by that? A lot of people nowadays say that they are spiritual. What I mean by that is that I believe that there is a creator, a source that has created all of us, all beings in the universe, all physical beings, but also spiritual beings, all of nature, all that is part of this oneness that is created or under the creation of Source, God, the universe, the Most High, all that is. These are all different ways of saying the same thing. And so I believe that. And I also believe that we are all part of that energy. And I believe that we are all fractals of that energy, that each of us has that spirit inside of us, not just us as humans, but also animals, plants, many of the indigenous cultures, this shamanic way of looking at the world that everything around us is made from spirit. And I have come to this understanding of our spiritual nature through it being revealed to me over time. And what do I mean by it being revealed to me? So, just to bring you kind of through my evolution, I was born and reared as a Southern Baptist. So I grew up religious or in a religious family, in a religious faith, and that was all that I knew. I actually didn't even know any other religions really beyond Christianity, other than kind of hearing of um, Judaism. Of course, if you grew up Christian, you have to know about the Jewish faith because that is part of the early biblical scriptures. I knew about Islam, but not a lot. It really wasn't until college. I actually took a world religions class, and that blew my mind, took me outside of even the Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Islam, Christianity. Those are the ones that I knew fairly well. I had no idea that there were other faiths like Taoism, like Buddhism, all of the Eastern religions and other parts of the world understanding their faith and beliefs and the beliefs and religions beyond monotheism, even our indigenous cultures that believe in many gods and goddesses. I had no concept of that because I was raised in this very singular, very narrow view religion and really of the world. And so that was my first kind of expansion, is taking that world religions class. And I really loved the philosophy of Buddhism and Taoism, just this really expansive, just beautiful view, peaceful view of the world. But I didn't do anything with that information. It wasn't really until my early 40s. It wasn't until my husband passed away in 2021 that I started to go on this deeper spiritual journey of seeking, because anyone who's lost someone really close to them can likely relate to this. When you are in such a state of shock and grief and loss, anything that you think you know, anything that you are clinging to, no longer seems equipped, no longer feels sufficient, no longer feels like it's enough to explain what is what is happening to you, what you're experiencing. And I had people sending me scriptures, and I used to have a prayer closet in my house where I had written out all of my favorite scriptures. And in times of despair, I would go and read those and pray. And this is not to say prayer is not a thing. I very much still incorporate prayer into my meditations, but at the time, the gravity of that loss, no scripture was enough for me. Nothing was enough in that moment of deep, deep grief and despair to help me make sense of my entire world crumbling in an instant. And so I found that I found solace going within myself, sitting with my inner thoughts, and just being in solace. And what I started to do in the early days of my bereavement, I had taken, initially it was a month off, but then that turned into 3 months. But after I had, actually, let me even back up. One of the first encounters I had with this inner voice, this inner knowing, my spiritual nature, was when I decided to go away on a solo trip to Mendocino County. That was about a month after my husband passed. And I knew that I needed some time to escape. I had been, there's a lot to do to plan a funeral, and then it's just so much emotion. And I had a lot of family around, which was beautiful, but also didn't give me the space to grieve alone. And I decided, okay, I'm going to take myself to Mendocino County, one of my favorite places in Northern California because of the redwoods. It's one of the few places on earth, I think, that you get both the ocean and the beautiful redwoods, the majesty of that juxtaposed with each other. And so I rented a nice hotel. I decided to splurge and get a hotel overlooking the Pacific Ocean in the redwoods of Mendocino County. And I asked the hotel staff, where could I go visit some trails? Now, if you know me, or if you knew the old me, I was not a hiking girl. I've since really come back to nature in ways that I didn't even expect. But at the time, I was not a nature girl. But something in my spirit, which I can now say now, I didn't know what it was then, but something was pulling me to go and take a walk in nature. So they told me about the Mendocino Coast Trail, and I drove to it, parked, walked. It's a beautiful view overlooking the Pacific Ocean. And I found a little spot, and I stood there overlooking the ocean on this kind of rock cliff. And I closed my eyes. And when I tell you, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. That was the first time in the month that my husband had died that I felt any inkling of peace. And so not only did I feel that spirit of peace, or that sense of peace wash over me, I also felt a deep knowing that everything is going to be okay. I can't tell you how I knew that, but that is what came into my body when that sense of peace washed over me, that knowing came through that I'm going to be okay. And I continued down this self care, self love, really, journey. I had to love myself back to life. That is how I crawled out of my grief. I had to love myself back to life. And I did that through daily acts of self care. And one of the first ways I found that I could show myself love was to move and make time for breathing. And that sounds silly because we breathe every second, but we all know this. We're not even conscious of our breath almost all the time. So we're not intentionally breathing. And oftentimes when we are breathing, it's very shallow. So I learned through Kundalini yoga. I stumbled upon a YouTube video that had a 30-day Kundalini yoga challenge. I didn't even know how to say Kundalini in the beginning. I had no concept of what this thing was, but this video just popped out of nowhere on my YouTube feed and it spoke to me. And so I said, why not? Like, what else am I doing? I'm on bereavement leave. So I decided to do the challenge. And through that Kundalini yoga, it taught me how to breathe deeply, how to breathe intentionally, and how to marry breath with movement. And the surprising thing with that is that it started to take me out of my mind. And in those moments that I was going through the Kundalini yoga practice, I wasn't wallowing in my sorrow. I wasn't worrying about what I was going to do about the rest of my life. I wasn't worrying about my son. I wasn't just all these things. I'm kind of stuck in these emotions that keep repeating themselves when you're in this cycle of grief. And so Kundalini yoga became a reprieve for me. And I remember distinctly one day after I had finished my practice, I was laying in Shavasana and I felt again that wave of peace roll over me. But this time I heard the voice of my husband, Al, very distinctly say, I'm with you. And that hit me so hard, so deeply in my spirit that I started to cry. I laid there on the mat and I cried tears of joy because I longed for him so much. I longed for him to walk back through the door every single day since he had passed. And so to hear his spirit come through and tell me that he is with me was the bit of hope that I needed to keep going. And so after that miraculous experience, I told myself that I need to continue to connect with myself in this way. I didn't understand at that time what I was really doing, that I was tapping into my spiritual self. I just knew that when I made it a priority to get out of bed and sometimes literally roll out of bed because I did not want to get out of bed, sometimes slide out of bed, drag myself out of bed. When I got myself up and got down on that mat and spent, sometimes it was 5 minutes stretching, that I felt more at peace. I felt more able to tackle the world. And so the next phase of this spiritual connection, I started doing yoga more intently and more intensely. And Kundalini turned into more of a regular vinyasa practice. And this was all still in the comfort of my home because we were still in the pandemic. So I was using various apps to learn yoga. and do that in the mornings before I started work. And then one of the things that I stumbled upon through the yoga has a way of making you feel in touch with your body, unlike anything I had experienced before. I used to work out in a boot camp format back in 2017. I lost a lot of weight and I was doing very intense physical activity. And when you're working out, I I felt the sense, it's hard to be in your head when you're lifting weights, but yoga has a different, it just, for me, I can't speak for anyone else, but it has a calming effect. So not only does it take me out of my head, but it makes me feel at peace. So I started to lean more into yoga because it was helping me improve in my grief. Um, and in my connection with myself and my breath and all the things. And so through yoga, I discovered meditation. And I had been someone who had tried to meditate for years because you always hear, as a busy, quasi burnt out, almost all the way burnt out, burnt up. I was burnt to a crisp many times in my career. And so I was always looking for solutions, and meditation kept popping up. And I have such a busy mind, like I think so many of us. So meditation was really hard for me to grasp because I couldn't quiet my mind. I was always thinking about the next thing that I had to do, or what I didn't do, or, you know, all the intrusive thoughts that come up. And I thought that the goal of meditation was to have a completely silent, empty mind. Now I know better that you can't possibly empty your mind. All you can do is learn to sit with the thoughts and be aware, become the observer of your thoughts, the not become identified with your thoughts, not become the thoughts. So through yoga, I started to do meditation, and it started as just through shavasana. Really, that's typically the last pose of any yoga practice. You lay on your back, and in English we call corpse pose. In Sanskrit, it is shavasana. So as you're laying on your back there, that's where I would find I could just release and go into a little bit of a meditation. And then I started to learn, okay, to sit up and do some guided meditations after my yoga practice. And that's when I started to hear these voices of inspiration. And you might be thinking, voices, what is she talking about? Well, first, I thought it was my own voice. And it would be these lovely, encouraging, just short phrases of encouragement, like, you are loved. Um, you are everything that you seek. It was very profound, philosophical, spiritual messages, really short. And I would just sit there in meditation, and these beautiful thoughts would pop in. And again, I thought it was my own voice. I was like, man, I'm a genius when I meditate. Your girl is on fire with the wisdom. And the more I began to meditate, and the more I think well, not I think, I know now, the more that I practiced this, I was able to deepen my spiritual connection, but also clear a lot of the negative energy and feelings that were weighing me down and keeping me disconnected. So we sometimes carry so much emotional baggage, so much pain, so much trauma. It keeps us at a lower vibration. And I know vibration sounds woo woo, but we are all just energy. And if you don't believe me, you probably shouldn't believe me. Don't ever take anyone's word at face value. Actually go and look it up for yourself, or try it out, even better. Everything spiritual needs to be felt. And so, but you can go and see, science will even tell you that we are all, everything in the universe is made of atoms. Atoms are made of smaller particles. Those smaller particles are energy. And so the way that we think and feel is a vibration of energy. And we know this intuitively, right? When you're angry, have you ever been so angry that you are shaking? That's energy. On the flip side of that, have you ever been so excited, so elated that your energy is through the roof? Again, energy. So we feel, especially if you're an empath like me, I can feel people's energy. And so, and I knew when I was going through my grief, I felt heavy. I was carrying a lot of heavy emotions. And that heavy energy keeps you almost like you have blinders on or you have filters on. You can't see the beauty, you can't see the joy or the bliss because you're so focused on the pain and the trauma. And so once I was able to work through that pain and trauma of losing my husband so suddenly and train myself to sit with myself, I began to distinguish my inner voice versus the voice of spirit. And I began to get really clear messages. And it became that I could distinguish, and still to this day, my inner voice usually comes through my right side of my brain or inner ear. I know it's me just rumbling around in my mind, versus when I'm hearing from spirit or getting a divine download. For me, this isn't the case for everyone, but for me, it comes through the left side of my brain, or I hear it through the left inner ear. And you might be thinking, what is this girl talking about? She is hearing things like we gonna pray for her. So, but rest assured, I am okay. I am very well, better than I've actually been in my entire life. And what I mean by I'm hearing the voice of spirit, I hear these beautiful voices of the spirit realm, of the angelic realm. And so not only can I hear, and this is a spiritual gift, everyone has spiritual gifts. Some people can see spirit. Those are people who are, you call it psychic or clairvoyant. Other people can hear, other people can smell. So there's lots of different spiritual gifts that people have. Mine's just happens to be what they call clairaudience, or being able to hear spirit. And not only can I hear these beautiful messages from the spirit realm, I can feel. And so that's how I know it's real too. When I'm getting what I sometimes call a divine download, or what other people might call a divine download, a channeled message. You could also refer to what I'm doing as channeling. So when I channel a message, not only am I hearing it, but I can feel. I can feel the presence of that spirit in my heart. I can feel like it's such an energy that comes in of love. You just feel it. It's an overwhelming feeling in my heart of love and acceptance and peace. And I share this because now that I'm able to tap into this spiritual connection, I have so many more gifts that I can tap into in this earthly walk. So being able to tap in and have a two-way dialogue. And so I think that's a distinction between the spiritual connection. When I grew up in the Christian faith, or Baptist in particular, we were taught to pray. And for me, again, I can't speak for anyone else. For me, prayer was always a one way communication. I was sending up my requests to God and not hearing anything in return. Whereas now, through this spiritual connection, I'm able to ask my spirit guides or my spirit team or ancestors or other angelic beings. I'm able to ask questions and receive guidance. And so that has shaped how I look at everything, because the guidance that I receive is so loving for humanity, for me as a part of humanity, but is also filled with hope. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this spiritual connection, because I found, again, I can't speak for anyone else, and I would encourage you to try this on for yourself. And I'll give you some tips in a moment of how you can tap in. But for me, it has left me with a profound sense of hope that humanity is ultimately going to be okay, that we are ultimately okay. Our souls are eternal, and we can always tap into our spiritual nature. So that's given me a lot of hope that all the chaos, all the craziness we see in the physical realm, so much of that is an illusion. Everything related to fear and separation and division and war, that is all meant to teach us lessons at the soul level so that we can evolve. So I look at it now, anything that I don't want in my life, anything that I don't prefer is just being, um, it's a lesson for me to then decide what I do prefer. And I know that sounds really difficult to grasp, because even something like loss, how could I possibly grow from the loss of my husband, for example? But I can speak from lived experience. That's exactly what happened, because I chose to ultimately accept what happened to me. And through the acceptance, and acceptance doesn't come right away, you have to work through the grief. So before it was shock, it was anger, it was um, I wanted to cuss everybody out. I wanted, everything to not have happened. I was in deep regret and shame and all the things, all the emotions you can possibly imagine. But eventually I landed at acceptance. And through that, I got a chance to find myself again. That was the gift. Now, of course, I wouldn't have wanted to lose my husband to discover that gift, but it happened. And when I was able to come to the acceptance that it happened, then I could receive all of the deep wisdom that comes with that sort of loss, including learning to love again. And so being able to tap into my spiritual connection has deepened that wisdom, because I do get such profound messages from the spirit realm, from the angelic realm, and I will begin to share those more. I'll be honest, this is something I've been working through. The messages have been coming more frequent, more detailed, um, just since November of last year. And it's been a lot to grapple with, because it's not something that we're used to. It's not something that seems quote unquote normal, but it's real. It's real. Um, as real as I'm talking to you, these messages come through, and they're beautiful. And what the spirit realm, or what my spirit guides have been encouraging me to do, is to share them, because the messages, they're not just meant for me, they're meant for all of us, or how they refer to humanity is the collective. So they're giving me messages to share with the collective, that are messages of love and hope, and how do we overcome fear, how do we get in touch with our spiritual nature, how do we get in touch with emotions, how do we use emotions as a compass rather than being consumed by emotions, what's going on with the consciousness of humanity, why does it seem like everything is burning down, everything is on fire, literally and figuratively. So they've given me so much insight to share, and I have just been coming to terms with it. Again, I had to first make sure I wasn't crazy. And I would, like, I thought, for a minute, I was like, am I going crazy? Like, am I really hearing this? Because again, we get so caught up in our five physical senses. As human beings, we get so caught up in what we can see, what we can touch, what we can hear, like out loud, auditory, um, that we begin to believe that there's nothing beyond those five senses. And when we can understand and really remember, because our spiritual nature has always been there and it will always be. So it's a remembering. When we can remember that at our deepest, at our core, we are spirit, then we began to remember and realize that there's a whole realm of possibility. There's a whole realm of reality, multiple realms beyond what we can physically see, beyond what we can physically touch. And but again, that's not what we've been taught. And so I had to come to grips with that. And now I am just working through how to share this message and this, how to share these messages in a way that benefits other people and benefits all of our spiritual growth and the journey, this very, very difficult journey that we walk here on earth. And so you'll hear more messages from me related to what I'm getting from my spirit guides. And take it with a grain of salt, or take it how you want to take it. Some people will hear the truth in these messages, other people will doubt, whatever. Right? Whatever rings true to you, take that. Whatever doesn't, leave it. I would just encourage you to always keep an open mind, because as I've allowed my mind to open, and really my heart, as I've opened my heart to all of these spiritual connections and these spiritual gifts, it has made me more joyful, more blissful, pun intended, more connected to God and to other people. And it's just ultimately made me feel at peace, because I know I don't have to worry about the cares of this world. I don't have to get bogged down in the drama and the trauma of everything. Even though those things feel so real, spirit is what's real. Our soul is what's real. Everything else is just, you may call it an illusion or an orchestration. It feels very real because it's meant to feel very real, because that's the way that we learn in this matrix that earth is. We are here to evolve as souls. So the experience has to feel real for us to evolve and get the soul lessons that our soul carries forward. So for me, I feel such a sense of peace and gratitude, knowing that I'm connected to something much bigger than me, and knowing that I'm connected to all of you, that I am you, you are me, we are all that is. We are all one. No matter how you slice it, we are all one. And so I would encourage you to just experiment. I told you I would give you some tips on how to dive into your spiritual connection if you're interested. I would say stillness. That's the first entry point, is to find some quiet time. And like I mentioned earlier, meditation is something that helped me to tap in. Doesn't mean you have to completely clear your mind. I started with guided meditation. That was a way to listen to the voice prompts to take me into mental relaxation and relaxing of my body and tapping into my breath. So I would recommend guided meditation. I'm actually starting to do some guided meditations myself. So I actually have my first guided meditation up on YouTube. You can search for that. It's called the Hall of Mirrors meditation. But you, of course, don't have to start with mine. You can find your own guided meditation that resonates with you. So meditation is something that I highly, highly recommend to start with, as a way to tap into that spiritual connection. The other way is nature. I told you the story of me going to Mendocino. When I, still to this day, I love being in nature now, because now I can fully appreciate that nature is God's canvas. Nature is alive with spirit as well. And so I try to go outside every day, even if it's just to sit out in my backyard. I have a lot of trees on my patio. And so I look at the trees, I listen to the birds, I watch the squirrels. Being in nature is very peaceful to me and is a spiritual experience. Especially the ocean. I love the ocean, and I love the redwoods, like I mentioned earlier. So I would encourage you to sit out in nature, walk amongst nature. You'll start to feel your connection to that spiritual force. And the other thing I would say, activities that get you out of your mind. Our mind is always racing and thinking and has to know. And the ultimate authority is spirit, which can be tapped in through our heart. And so, what my guides have shared with me is the heart is the supreme knowledge that taps us into our soul, our inner knowing, not our mind. So they've shared with me our mind is for collating information, sorting, making sense, but it's the heart that must decide. It's the heart that has the deeper knowing, the deeper wisdom of our soul, which is eternal. So being able to do anything that takes you out of your mind, for me, it's yoga, but anything, Tai Chi is a wonderful practice. Just any type of movement that gets you focusing on your body and your breath and not thinking or doing. So those are three of the ways that I have found meditation, nature, movement that has allowed me to tap in and deepen my spiritual connection. And through practicing over years of strengthening my spiritual connection, I am now able to reap the reward of these spiritual gifts and having that connection. The last thing I will say, because I want to make sure that this is understood, by no means am I special. The fact that I can tap in and hear my spirit guides or hear from the angelic realm, that is not unique to me. What Spirit has told me is that all of us can tap into our spiritual gifts. First of all of us have spiritual gifts. They may be different from one another, but all of us have spiritual gifts. And most importantly, all of us have spiritual help. We all have spirit guides or angels. You've heard the term, I'm sure you've heard the term guardian angels. We all have guardian angels or a team of helpers in the spirit realm that are around us all the time, ready, wanting to offer guidance and support. The issue is that most of us don't know or don't believe in that or have been taught that you shouldn't tap into spirits, that somehow that's demonic or that's sacrilegious. Again, I can only speak from my experience. Not to say that there aren't dark energies, but when I tap in, I say that I am asking for guidance from my guardian angels or for spirit beings of light or celestial beings of light, so that I'm making clear that I am opening myself up to loving energies, light beings, not any dark or malevolent forces. So it is possible to tap into those light beings to bring you the love and the wisdom and not dark energies or dark entities. So all we have to do is open ourselves up and to believe. They're trying to guide us every single day through the synchronicities, through the, you know, repeating patterns of numbers you see. Those are called angel numbers. Different, sometimes it might be a bird that come and lands on your windshield, or a whisper that you hear. The angelic realm, the spiritual realm is all around us and trying to communicate and support us as human beings. We just have to be open. And secondly, we have to ask for help. There is the fundamental rule of the universe, and particularly here in the earth plane, that fundamental rule is free will. So the angelic realm, the spiritual realm cannot interfere directly. They cannot help without being asked. So when we ask, we are then making a choice to engage. So that's why it's important to open yourself up and ask for help, and then your spirit team can come in and give you the guidance that you need. And ultimately, that's just meant to be support. Ultimately, you have to still feel what resonates in your heart. Even when I'm telling to you today, this is my personal experience. This is what I am living and have lived. But that might differ for you. That may differ. So you have to see you are the internal authority of you. Because you are a spark of the divine, you have the wisdom. So all you have to do is begin to trust your heart and your inner knowing. Trust that over anything external. So no matter who the guru or who the person telling you, always check with yourself and see if it feels real, myself included. Don't take anything I say at face value. If it resonates, beautiful, try it on, test it out. If it doesn't resonate, that's okay. That is okay. So I hope that that gives you a little insight into how I found more peace and bliss and love in my life through my deepened, newfound in many ways, spiritual connection. And I wish for you to tap into the eternal, unconditional love of your spirit. May you have so much peace and joy and the fulfillment of all your dreams and desires in this lifetime. Stay tuned for another installment of Bliss or That.
You can get with bliss, or you can get with that. You can get with bliss, or you can get with that. You can get with bliss, or you can get with that. You can get with bliss. Bliss is where it's at. Come on. Come on. Come on. Come on.
Hey, Anderson, welcome back. Ooh, I'm excited what you have for us this week.
I know it's not cool, but my hair is finally long enough, and I'm just like, I'm gonna do it. Hey,
Are you
Auntie.
giving us a little emo?
You know, a little My
I'm here
Chemical
for it.
Romance. You see with the Letterman jacket I got on,
Right.
high school. And speaking of things from like my youth, I got another bliss for that for you guys, and this one comes from Power Rangers.
Ooh, my sister used to go hard for Power Rangers. Let me tell you, she's about your age too.
Okay, like how could you not? How could you not go hard for Power Rangers? It was one of the best shows for kids made, and it's smart because it teaches you about the business. The whole point of Power Rangers was they took old footage from the Japanese show, and then they just recorded the non-Power Ranger outfit suits with kids in America for $5 on the penny. You know what I mean? Like for 5 nickels on the penny. They didn't have no SAG wasn't around for those teenage actors, so they just kind of got hit through the ringer. But this is the bliss about authenticity, and sometimes authenticity is on the nose.
Say more.
So the Black Power Ranger from the first season of Power Rangers, Walter Emmanuel Jones, which strongest black name in history after Martin Luther King Jr. That's just Walter Emmanuel Jones. Oh, that sounds like the civil rights movement right there by himself.
Right there.
Like, oh, okay, he's why we can vote. Not Abe Lincoln, no, Walter Emmanuel Jones.
Yes.
So there was a documentary that came out about the show. One of the writers said he regretted casting how they cast. They had the Native American coded dude as the Red Ranger. They had the nerdy white guy as the Blue Ranger. They had the white girl as the Pink Ranger. Then they had, rest in peace to Tui Chang, as the Yellow Ranger. She died in a car accident a few years back. And then they had Walter Jones as the Black Ranger.
The Black Ranger. Go figure.
And I'm like, but everybody had someone that was for them.
Yes.
Like, it's not a mistake. Walter Jones said it himself. He said it wasn't a mistake. It was a milestone. Even his sound bites are preaching. That's pulpit.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
That's straight from the.
He's on the pulpit.
That is 4 more words away from being a Negro spiritual. You know what I mean? And then if we just go back to the casting of Power Rangers, eventually they get reverse jumped by the Green Ranger, who was kind of Italian coded. Like, you're like, oh, okay. And then he stops being evil, comes back as the White Ranger, and then you're like, oh, okay. It's all right, guys. I'm white. Like, you don't even gotta worry about none of that. None of that mozzarella over there. This is all hamburgers, y'all. Got you. So the first casting of Power Rangers is diabolical, but I'm gonna say stereotypes come from a place. They are true, and sometimes to tell a good story, you got to be authentic. So that's a Bliss. I'm gonna give that 5 Albertas from Deliverance. That's what I'm gonna rank that one. You just
If y'all haven't seen that, oh boy. There-
yep.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's actually a good ranking system because the
Mm-hmm.
flack that Lee Daniels caught for that character and an argument could be made around, was that an authentic portrayal? Did it go too far? So it's kind of an interesting comparison. And I think with the Power Rangers back then, because if we're talking about the original one, that was
Mm-hmm.
maybe mid 90s.
Like 93, 94.
Okay, yeah, okay. And so it's interesting, and I could understand the character saying, Walter Emmanuel Jones saying that it
Mm.
was a milestone, because back then it really was to see any kind of representation. So I'm always going to give a Bliss to having everybody represented and seeing themselves on the screen.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've evolved, so now hopefully there's some nuance. Like we can add some depth.
Mm-hmm. We've got
Right.
ranges now because we're
Right, we've
not
got
all thugs.
ranges. We get to be whole. We get to be complete, and that's the true Bliss. But I'm gonna give
Mm-hmm.
that three. I'm gonna give that three Albertas,
Mm-hmm.
3.5. Because I love the early representation, and now we just have to fill out the characters, fill out the casting with more depth.
Mm-hmm. You know what would have made Alberta a little bit more realistic?
What?
If she was in like the 200 lbs. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like if Alberta had a fupa, like we'd be like, oh no, that's real.
That's
Yeah, I
done.
know 5 of them. All her babies got pretty hair. All them babies got pretty hair.
On that note, let me continue.
Don't
Talk to
cancel
you
us.
next week. Bye, y'all.